Today we are in conversation with Mr. Atul Timurnikar, Chairman and co-founder of the Global Schools Foundation. It is a global network of international schools spread across 20 campuses with 15,000 students spread across the world. Okay, so at a time when education across the world has come to a standstill, as an international global institution, how do you plan to adapt in the post-COVID world?
I think the way situation is evolving and the way things are really changing and people were not expecting. So this is really unexceptional times since the last 100 years. But we will certainly try and take a look at how things are evolving with regards to education. The COVID-19 crisis, in a way, is a boon for the world, especially the educators, to teach us about the education needs which are required to change and to be able to better prepare our young learners for the future that might hold for them. Our job as educators actually comes by not just facilitating this, but also by making sure that this is effectively implemented. The way things are going, and now what we hear is this could even last for more than a year, maybe 2 to 3 years. And we won't be surprised to find that online education would become the most significant part of our lives, particularly very dominant, and would be a clear direction for the future. So when COVID-19 situation worsened, we were the first school to take a quick action for the safety of our students. So we divided them into 2 groups and at any given point in time, only one group was allowed to be physically present in the school, while the rest of the students were connected to the classrooms from their homes through the GIS virtual classrooms. Now, one can see that all our classrooms were fully COVID compliant, and every single classroom was fitted with the facilities for virtual classrooms. Example, TV displays, Apple TV, document cameras, typical video conferencing setup, that's required for every virtual experience. And post-COVID-19, I think that this method, which has worked really well for us, may become the new normal. Most of the cohorts may continue to be divided into teams. Classrooms will be partially occupied and marked for social distancing, and safety will become of paramount importance for as long as students are in the school. So the 2 teams that we put in, one from home and one from school, will actually swap each other's positions every week. But at no point in time will the 2 teams will be able to meet each other. Allowing such virtual schooling as an option to physical attendance can also be looked into. And this is basically to minimize the stress, to give students more time to study and to ensure the safety at all times. We think that the mobile-based free virtual classrooms, virtual conferencing systems will come to market within 2 months. And I'm repeating the word free here because everyone would be using them to the maximum extent. With regards to India, the government school education program, which they've just launched for Doordarshan, is a fine example of large-scale virtual education, which I think can go beyond borders. Another aspect where virtual will play a big role will be in the examinations so that the exams can be conducted in a fair manner. For this, we are implementing what we call as IDEAS and through proctoring, online proctoring, meaning in-camera exams, where the teachers can watch over the live camera, watch over the student through the live camera, where the student is writing the exams, and and to make sure that the student is not using any of the non-permitted methods, right? So this on-camera exams, which are being done by some higher learning institutions, will also become very common as far as schools are concerned.
Right.
I think going forward, even in exams, there are going to be multiple ways things are going to be conducted. We have also successfully implemented what we call as the proctoring for small online events, small groups. And we're pretty sure that once these proctoring exams are conducted for large-scale school exams, this method will effectively allow students to take exams safely from the homes in the same way they used to take these exams from the school. So our dedicated in-house IDEA software, which is an acronym for Integrated Digital Examinations and Assessment of System, which provide creation, delivery, and even conducting the exams with military grade precision. This allows all answer scripts to be assessed online by teachers who are present anywhere in the world. So while we have taken care of taking the exams, answer scripts are also being taken care of. Of course, the main challenges will be extracurricular, co-curricular activities, which required a lot of in-person participation. But we think we have a solution for that as well. Our sports data analytics systems can be an answer to physical activities side of schooling. We have digital sensors in place which collect on-field data for indoor and outdoor sports, which can help coaches, students, and teachers analyze the dynamic on-games virtual data. And this would also encourage online participations for sports which are normally conducted over online, such as chess and many other activities that we think can be really a great example for continue to be occupied.
So can we talk about the students themselves? So GIS itself has around 15,000 students spread around the world. And with COVID, more than 1.53 billion students have had their education come to a standstill. In India alone, more than 200 million. So how do we help them transition into this new normal psychologically and in every aspect of the education process?
Right. So, we believe that the scale of impact is going to be felt everywhere, not just India. Whether it is Indian students in schools or kindergartens or higher learning colleges. The impact solution is very simple. The impact solution requires contact to be minimized. So any way we can provide education based on a non-contact method, online is one such example. And online is probably the effective and the most cheapest way to do so. So this would be a very, very effective way of conducting education. Just yesterday, Cambridge University, that they're going to conduct the entire academic session for the next year starting September, right up to June of 2021. It's entirely going to be conducted in online. So we are going to see massive deployment of online tools. There's been a lot of private companies already in the space. There are video conferencing companies in the space. There are LMS companies in the space. We are going to see that all these products which were once available to so-called only a select few are now going to become the the common asset for everyone, for every child, be it villages, be it small towns, be it rural areas or any other areas, including urban areas. The digital mechanisms are going to become really the big way of delivering education. Wait for a few weeks. I'm going to be sure that there's going to be a lot more announcements coming up from large companies, people like WhatsApp. Zuckerberg has some initiatives in education. I'm sure Mark Zuckerberg will try and do something to deliver education through Facebook, for example, or Google is going to try and deliver education through Google, Meet and etc. So we are going to see a lot of these tools, which used to be seen very rarely, mostly in the social space, now descend into the education space. And that will make it very easy for people to get access to cheap and accessible education.
And so when we talk about students who have reached the end of their primary education and they're prepared for traveling abroad and other options, it's come to a point where these options are limited and we can't explore as much. How do students transition into a world where travel is restricted and they don't have as many options as far as learning is?
I'll tell you something very interesting. And I live in Singapore, so the story is more to do with Singapore. Singapore sees a lot of students go to States and UK and Australia. It's the same case for India as well. First time I've seen in the last 25 years, students really saying, I want to continue study in my home country. So you're going to see, the lakhs of students who used to once visit the other countries and spend, I think close to $10 billion, if I'm not wrong, Indian students were spending abroad every year. So 10 billion of currency is now going to be preserved in India. So there's a currency benefit to it. But more importantly, the institutions which are in India, which were not considered as the first choice in the past, will have to really scale up in a massive way. Whether it's the colleges or the universities, you have Amity, you have so many colleges and private universities, they will see a huge amount of influx of students coming into their universities. And whether it is face-to-face learning or virtual learning or blended learning, we are going to see these universities, have massive number of students coming in. Virtual will become the norm or the new normal. The pricing of the product or the education that is going to be available or used to be available. Take, for example, if a year would cost you about 6 lakhs a year, is very high chances that the same education you will get over virtual at maybe 50% discount to the earlier price. So in a way, it will benefit the consumer. It will benefit the consumer to have access to, I know for sure that today there are school students who are not in their home countries, but actually they're attending to virtual classrooms based out of Bombay or based out of other countries, and they're attending their schools in their home countries because they can't travel back to their countries of residence. So this is going to be something very positive. It will also mean that a lot of redundancies in the original form of face-to-face classrooms, a lot of cost factors used to be added to it, unnecessarily people used to be there, which universities or colleges and schools are going to see, why do I need these people? I can actually effectively use those assets for much better productivity. I can use resources into much more meaningful ways. And so it's going to impact financials, the basic economics. It will also impact the way that teachers and professors used to deliver education. It will also impact the way parents are going to make decisions. Because, end of the day, the parent is a consumer and the parent is going to decide and see what value I get. Today, you could literally have an example of within a few weeks, that student who's actually living in Delhi, attending a school or a virtual learning in Bombay, because they feel that the teachers there are giving far better education. Online coaching, I can see a massive transformation happening there. Coaching centers are going to see massive shutdowns. They are going to switch to online. One teacher in one center used to deal with 80, 90 students, is now is able to deal with 300, 400 students at one go, and yet have that connectivity on a bidirectional basis. So we're going to see the scale play its game. We're going to see a lot of economics getting affected and people actually using better economics to deliver their products and services. And we're also going to see much better quality of education emerge through this. Because if, let's say, a college in Noida is really competing with a college in, let's say, NCR, then the best college in NCR will prevail because students will immediately switch to where you have great faculty, or better teaching techniques, and where the child is deemed to be learning more. So learning, the focus on learning, earlier the focus used to be on which college, which city, how much status does it have, what kind of, there used to be a little bit of status symbol attached to it. Now the status symbol is gone. You can simply take away that entire thing and now you can say, look, this is the course I'm doing. The focus will now come back on learning. Focus will come back on skills. Focus will come back on what do you know? How do you know how to implement? So the vocational skills of the industry. We've been chatting with industry players and we're saying, hey guys, this is a time for you to descend into, even at school education level and not just college level, and talk about skills that are going to emerge. We've been saying 21st century skills have always been the focus for industry. But just about a year back, we were at seminars in Spain and we were talking about what are the 21st century skills. Nobody ever imagined that, just a few months down the line, we'll be talking about completely different set of skills. So communication will become very important in the virtual world. Teachers are not going to be literally rated as per, their historical track record, but also what are they doing in their today's world? How are they adapting to the new normals? All these are going to become very important parameters. And the game is changing every week, every 2 weeks. 4 weeks back, 3 weeks back, I think WHO was telling everybody, hey guys, open up your countries, industry is suffering. 1 week later, they say, hey guys, hold on, don't open too fast. So there's a bit of, contradictory statements that come out sometimes. But I think India has done a fantastic job by taking that decision to lock down and to be able to get all the people together. Because, this is a time really that all the systems that are required to be put in place to deal with larger infections going forward, to deal with, creating more facilities hospital beds, rehabilitation centers, quarantine facilities. This is what I think is going on at a very rapid pace. The army, the defense are going to be participating in this response to help the people come out of this. So all countries, we have seen the same thing. The defense is playing an important role in trying to bring these things together and to make sure that when the economy starts slowly opening up, and if let's say the predictions really come true that the vaccine is going to be delayed by more than 2 years, which means that we are going to see a delayed the COVID infections are going to continue. People are going to be scared to go into mass events and meet people at mass gatherings. You want to see marriages suddenly become virtual. Now there are legislations being enacted in countries where marriages, and including Singapore, where marriages are being done on virtual, on Zoom, and the magistrate is signing off on the official marriage register that you've been married. So these are really social changes, educational changes, and every industry is going to have that impact. Every sector is going to see rapid change in the way, for example, transport. Just imagine if people are going to travel less, what effect this will have on auto industry. So there is going to be everybody from Mr. Anand Mahindra to Tata's, everybody has to think about how they're going to come out of this situation and be able to deal with it.
So we have seen how the coronavirus was able to freeze so many of our essential institutions. So going forward, how can we prepare ourselves for not just a pandemic, but any threat of such large proportions?
So, one of the things that one needs to prepare really for is you need to have a great leadership in place, because I think you can have best systems in place, but if the leadership kind of starts using a little bit of, political mileage, or, starts basically defocusing from the main issue. So I think that's not the case in India. So that's very good. And I think overall, if I would want to restrict myself to the education sector, I think for us, for example, the tsunami in Japan was the earthquake and the resultant tsunami in Japan was an experience. I mean, we had a tsunami over, and when the school was in operation, and there was a massive earthquake, there were people who were unable to travel, all railroads, everything locked down, and students are in the school. And it kind of was the first major natural disaster that we came across, where we realized that, look, we have to be wired, we have to be networked, we have to be available to each other in a world where, for example, the telephone lines in tsunami actually went down. So all the landlines went off. The only thing that were working was mobile. And what we had to do was really set up a war room outside Japan to make sure evacuation of these students happened. Every single child was taken to their parent homes. And this exercise was carried out for 12 hours, right, stretching up to 2 a.m. in the morning. And there was a constant fear of this tsunami getting lashed out. So it actually told us, and the previous episodes of the GFC crisis in 2008 and the 2003 SARS episode that happened in Southeast Asia, I think what it basically means is you've got to be ready with your online systems. Most of the education, and I can see various segments of parents and who are for it and against it, and some say, look, I have to have a face-to-face education, or some are okay with kind of hybrid, blended. But I think what people will realize is that you're getting same quality of education in a virtual world. So many of our systems, whether it is, take for instance today, for example, a finance function, literally nobody is in the office. Everybody is operating from their homes, but still you've got payrolls going on, you've got claims going on, you've got every single function of whether it's finance or HR, or for example, the operating logistics, etc. Everything is going on, but it's all going on a virtual world. So luckily for us, with the current internet era, access to online is not a problem. Everybody has an access to data. Some people have access to Wi-Fi, etc. But I think more or less 4G phones are there, and that is good enough for us. What we need to do is really take the aspect of education and keep focusing our minds to say, how do I put this onto mobile? This was something that we've been talking about to our teams and our leadership teams the last 5 years. Can you put this on mobile? No, it's very easy, difficult, blah, blah, whatever. What is the need for it? Student doesn't use mobile. But we've been actually putting things on mobile. So today, as a result, we have a much better head start. So for example, we are soon going to deploy something like for online exams, where students can actually take the exams using the mobile. The teachers can view them from their cameras, and yet the exams will be written on answer sheets. It can be attached by the students and uploaded to their LMS. So what we're trying to do is use mobiles as much as possible. Coming to in I think in a year or two, or maybe slightly more than a year or two, you will see 5G entering into the markets. Now 5G is like 20 times the speed of 4G. So in an average handset, you would probably get 4 to 5 MB in a good coverage area. You get 20 MB per second. You will get 100 MB per second in a 5G phone. So if you start looking at phone as an instrument of delivery, that will make our education not only mass reachable, but also it will allow us to think about how we can change ourselves. When things are back from post-COVID, for example, and when students get used to attending all these tuition classes online on Skype and Zoom, I don't think students are going to go back and travel 45 minutes in a school bus or auto rickshaw or go on a two-wheeler to say, "Mujhe sir ke ghar pe jana hai." I think the travel will be taken as a waste of time. People will just sit at their homes, log into their phones, and be basically able to talk to the tuition teachers. So what is going to happen is, I think we have to be prepared. Every single service element of education needs to be mobile focused. And that's the only way out. And I think as long as we keep that focus in every single aspect and feature, our learning won't be disrupted. So that's very important piece.
Do you believe that schools as we know them, traditional classrooms, will reopen in the near future? And when they do, what will be different about it?
As I said, this is a golden question that even the president of US doesn't have an answer to. But I think as we are beginning to see, there are some switching to purely online, like the Cambridge University has announced it. Many of the US, UK, Australia universities are going to go online. So that's understood. But as far as schools are concerned, we are beginning to see countries announce opening of schools. In fact, Singapore government has just announced yesterday that the schools are going to be open from early June. We have actually operated in this during the COVID period with a model where we had half the students in the school and half the students were basically dialing in from homes. So the blended learning will continue. It's not a very difficult proposition to really have schools operate during the COVID. It's basically a question of implementing all the preventive measures, such as temperature taking at home and making sure the child doesn't go to the classroom or the school. Temperature taking within the school. You may have individual temperature takings or group temperature taking systems implemented. There are many companies who are going to come up with all these things because even corporate offices are going to need this. But yes, schools will open. There would be a lot of norms and rules and directions being set up by the governments to implement safe distancing in schools. And you would see a limited portion, maybe 1/3 or 1/4 of students physically in the school, and majority of them will operate from home. The other things we will see is that students will have to wear the masks. Some may bring in their windshields because something like a helmet visor. So the windshields will be helpful while they are sitting in the cafeteria. And this way, I think there are many systems we can put in to counter and minimize the contact between the students within the schools. And given our 2 weeks of operation of these blended learning and partially in schools and partially in homes, we believe that, and we didn't have any risk coming out of it, even though we had like 2,000 students in the campus at any time, and the rest of them were from other locations. So we think it is a doable thing. There needs to be a public confidence around it. Parents need to be confident that schools are a safe place for their child. School buses are a safe places for their child. So even students are going to be requiring school buses, seating to be, far away, to maintain that 1 meter distance. So you will see all these things in place: cafeteria, school buses, classrooms, labs, libraries, all places we'll have to implement safe distancing. And it's possible to open the schools even as soon as July onwards.
Thank you so much, sir. If you enjoyed the video, check out edxlive.com for more such content.